Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ramon Campos. I'm with the Colombian Mission to the UN, and I'm honored to serve as your moderator for today's important panel, Journalism During Genocide, part of a broader event, which we have called The War on Truth, Press Freedom Under Israeli Occupation. This event has been organized by the Permanent Mission of Colombia to the UN in collaboration with the Permanent Observer Mission of the State of Palestine to the UN and with support of Reporters Without Borders. We're gathered here today to discuss a critical issue. How can we understand the systematic killing of Palestinian journalists in the context of international law and press freedom? What legal protections, conventions, treaties are violated when journalists are targeted? What obligations does Israel, as the occupying power, have under international law to protect freedom of the press in Gaza and the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory? As information is weaponized and truth is suppressed, the work of journalists in Palestine becomes not only vital but very dangerous. So thank you for being here. I'd now like to open the floor to Ambassador Raúl Sánchez, Deputy Permanent Representative of Colombia to the UN, who will offer brief welcoming remarks.
Good afternoon to all, and thank you for joining us today in a conversation that we believe is urgent to have, for not only the truth is under attack, but so are the lives of all journalists reporting from the occupied Palestinian territories. I thank all of my fellow panelists that are here, as well as Ambassador Mansour, that will give the final remarks at the end of this session. As the Special Rapporteur of the Promotion and Protection of the Right to Freedom of Opinion and Expression has stated, the conflict in Gaza has unleashed a global crisis of freedom of expression. Reports indicate that Israel's military action since October 2023 has been the deadliest conflict for journalists and media workers globally in the past 3 decades. The unprecedented level of killing of journalists, attacks on media infrastructure, and restrictions and bans imposed on foreign media continue to hinder the right to information not only of people in Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territory, but also of global audiences. Furthermore, the restrictions on foreign press impose a disproportionate burden on local journalists and media, which constitute the majority of the victims. The deliberate and discriminatory suppression of Palestinian voices worldwide also represents an attack on freedom of expression and contributes to conceal the genocidal intent of the occupying power. We are alarmed about the pattern of killings and arbitrary detention of journalists and destruction of press facilities and equipment in Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territory. And it is with this intention that we want to pay homage to the courageous journalists who risk their lives every day so that the world can know the truth. In the run-up to the high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of a two-state solution, we want to pay this homage to the more than 210 journalists who have been killed in the past 19 months, and to raise awareness within the international community about the situation that they are facing. It is our responsibility to act immediately and decisively to stop this flagrant violation of international humanitarian law. Before giving back the floor to our panelists, I want to finish by inviting you all to join us later today at 6 p.m. for the opening of a photo exhibition showcasing the work of photojournalists Mauricio Morales and Fatima Hassouna. I want to make a specific and final remark regarding the events that we have coordinated for today. While we are talking about freedom of press and expression, the Mission of Colombia would like to highlight that the original exhibition for this evening was supposed to be made at the curved wall within the United Nations headquarters. It was informed to the mission at last minute The space was unavailable for our photo exhibition due to the language that we were using, specifically the word genocide. We fervently hope that this last-minute change doesn't hinder your participation, but also creates awareness that we are paying too much attention to language and not too much to reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Sanchez. Before we begin, just a quick note on the format. Each panelist will have between 8 and 10 minutes for their remarks. After that, we'll open the floor for audience questions toward the end of the session. If you'd like to ask a question, please write it down on one of the papers being distributed by our colleagues. They will collect them before we conclude the panelists' interventions. It's now my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Ms. Francesca Albanese, who is joining us virtually, is the Special Rapporteur of the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967. She will be joining us virtually from Tunis. As many of you know, Ms. Albanese has been systematically documenting and reporting to the UN Secretary General on the genocide in Palestine. Her important reports have revealed to the world the severity of the situation on the ground. Ms. Nour Swirki is a Palestinian journalist and human rights defender, joining us today from Gaza. She has been reporting from the ground, taking incredible risks since the current escalation of violence began. Mr. Mauricio Morales is an independent Colombian photojournalist who has extensively covered conflict and its impact on civilians, both in Colombia and across the Middle East, including Syria, Libya, Iraq, and Palestine. In 2024 and 2025, he has been focusing on documenting the destruction caused by the latest Israeli offensive against Palestinian communities in the occupied West Bank. Lastly, Mr. Clayton Weymers is the Executive Director of RSF USA, that's Reporters Without Borders USA, an international organization dedicated to defending press freedom and the right to information worldwide. In his role, Mr. Weymers leads RSF efforts to monitor press freedom across the English-speaking Americans and to advance global initiatives that protect journalists and promote access to information. Let's begin with Ms. Albanese, who will share her perspective on how this conflict has affected press freedom in Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territory, and how the ongoing unrestrained attacks on Palestinian media professionals should be understood in this context. Thank you, Ms. Albanese, for being here, but I think we have Nour. Should we start with Nour? Oh, there you go. Now we see you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Sorry, I had technical issues and finally it's solved. Thank you for having me here. Please, Nour, go ahead. I'll come after you.
It's your turn. Shall I?
Okay, please, Ms. Albanese, go ahead. We can see you and we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to be with you as the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territory. It has been a difficult year. Actually, this Monday has been marked by pain that I don't think my predecessors have been exposed to. Despite the fact that being the Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territory has always entailed exposure to inhumane, unbearable suffering, and still what I've seen the Palestinian people going through in the last 20 months, it's abominable. I don't have other words to describe it. Yes, of course, I have the comfort of international law, the certainty of the rule of law as I've learned it on books, and the solidity of the human rights framework that for over 80 years it has been established and tried and corrected and enhanced, and today I'm at loss. I'm at loss as a lawyer. I'm at loss as a human being. I'm at loss as a mother who's to see what's happening to thousands and thousands of other mothers every day and their children. And the question is, everything that has been a certainty for me and people like me, in terms of rule of law, in terms of human rights, do they matter today? I say yes. I say yes despite all the crises that the Palestinian people first and foremost, and the Israelis who have conscience of what's happening and stand, they're few, but they stand with the Palestinians, with their body and with their mind, against the genocide, against the forever occupation, and against apartheid. And because of all this, I say, because of all what we are seeing, I say, despite the losses, the tumultuous, I call it the watermelon revolution, because this is how students have embraced it last year. But this tumultuous moment might be bringing something that is less terrific, less horrific than what we see today. Because the young generation speaks human rights language more than my generation. Actually, they are vindicating their rights in the street, in their universities, and so many other ordinary citizens with them, and workers and intellectuals. Now, the point is, what shall we do with this tumultuous moment? I see two huge hindrance factors. And one is member states. Member states themselves. I find myself in a very, very awkward position when I speak to member states, because in bilateral meetings and in the corridors of the United Nations noble buildings, they seem to agree with me that Israel has crossed all red lines. And still, when looking at their voting patterns in the General Assembly, and worse, when looking at the flow of weapons and trade between them, their territory, their companies, their universities, their pension funds, and Israel, I'm at loss. So the first problem is with the lack of coherence that exists today in the international community, but not among the people, among their rulers. And again, I don't know how many member states are listening to this. I don't know. I don't have the pleasure to be with you right now. I don't know how many people are in the room. But really, to the diplomats, to the delegates who are listening to this today, I have to say, how do you do to go ahead with all what is coming through Gaza every day? How can you do with a humanitarian camouflage that is not just Israel? I don't even blame Israel anymore. Israel is part of the system. But how we can continue, and one for all, we're calling humanitarian aid what Israel is devising for the Palestinians, a country whose leaders are wanted by the ICC for war crimes and crimes against humanity, is taking the lead in deciding how to provide aid. And this is not provision of aid, by the way. This is starvation through an engineered mechanism of sadism that, as a former colleague of mine has said, has transformed Gaza in an abattoir. And it pains me to say that. And the last point of deception that I have and concerns very much the core of this meeting is the media. Look, this is not the first time that the media is complicit in a genocide. Oh, this is not. It's in fact in the jurisprudence of international tribunals. The Arusha Tribunal and the ICTY, the International Criminal Tribunal of former Yugoslavia, ascertained that both private actors and the media can be part of genocide, like in other war crimes and crimes against humanity. But what we have new here, absolutely unprecedented, unless we want to go back with our mind to the forbidden analogy. God forbids, I think, of what we have done, we Europeans have done to our Jewish citizens 100 years ago and less, and to the Roma and Sinti and to other people who didn't conform with a pure race. But this is the only case in which we see this linking the dots across states in dehumanizing a people as such. And international media, corporate media, especially in the West, has been to a large extent complicit in fabricating the consensus that has allowed so many people to believe talking points coming from the government of Israel and the Israeli army that have enabled the environment that has tolerated the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza, and which is now strangling into an advancing annexation in the West Bank. I was in Cannes, and this is my last remark. I was in Cannes a few weeks ago after the screening of the documentary that Fatma Hassouna had been part of. I was next, elbow to elbow, with the filmmaker Sapideh Farsi, who might be probably listening to us. And I didn't belong to that place for sure, but I went there. Because of a message. We cannot continue in holding a space for the Palestinians when they are killed, commemorating them and celebrating their grandeur while they are no longer with us. And this is why my call wants to be a wake-up call today. And I'm not even reminding the tons of norms that we have in international law, humanitarian law, human rights law, that oblige journalists themselves to exercise their profession according to ethics. But seriously, we all have a responsibility as human beings to stop what not just Israel, but all of us are letting happen to the Palestinians. Because if Palestine was a crime scene today, it would have the fingerprints of all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Albanese. And I can assure you there's a lot of people in the room. You can't see us, but it's a good turn up, so thank you. I will now give the floor to Ms. Nour Swirki, who's joining us from Gaza.
Yes, hello everybody, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me this chance as a Palestinian journalist covering the genocide inside Gaza Strip since the first day till now. We are speaking now about more than 600 days. We have been working, reporting in the field with no rest. Okay, even on the ceasefire, we had maybe a double shifts because we have been there monitoring the applying of the ceasefire and the return back, the prisoner exchange, and all these issues related to the ceasefire. So we didn't have any rest since the break of the war till now, then since the October 2023 till now, and we are talking about now 20 months of hard work for the journalists here in Gaza Strip with no support from any other parties. There is an obstacle, or it's prevented for international journalists to be in Gaza, to enter Gaza and to support us as a journalist, or let us take a break and they can continue the work. There is this controlling of the entrance of the international journalists here. So this is trying to reduce the voices of the victims and the quality of the reporting. In addition, we are facing one of the most let's say dangerous environments of work, one of the dangerous field environments in the last years. We are under the fire, and in the same time we are doing our jobs. You know the statistics. According to the local resources here in the Gaza Strip, the number is 227 journalists, including 46 female journalists have been killed by Israeli fires and airstrike among these 20 months. I'm not going to speak about the static itself. I'm going to speak about my colleagues, the personal and professional sense beyond these numbers. The last journalist was killed yesterday. Mu'min Abu al-Auf, when he was in a mission, he was filming or recording a mission of rescuing some injuries with the paramedics. After they hit with an Israeli airstrike, they went to the apartment, and then this crew of the journalists and the paramedics were also hit, so they did in this attack. He was the 227, but before that I had my colleague Ahmed Qalaja. He was the 2026. Ahmed was a very ambitious, calm, hard worker, and he was my colleague. We were together in Rafah in the journalist camp when we were displaced, and then we moved to Deir al-Balah also. And all what he was doing is doing his job and also to survive from this war. And then when he was in duty, an Israeli airstrike also at Al Ma'madani hospital, when a group of journalists were there, hit them with and there was 4 journalists killed by this airstrike inside this place, Al Ahli Hospital in Gaza Strip. Ahmad was one of them who had a shrapnel in his head, and he didn't make it, so he was killed there with 3 others. Too many of my colleagues also, they were killed when they have one of the happiest moments of their lives. Yahya Sbeh was killed after his baby girl was delivered. Only 5 hours and he was killed. Ayman al-Jidi, he was waiting for his baby boy delivery and he was hit inside the hospital, and then his wife put the boy, and he was named after his father's name, Ayman, so his name was Ayman al-Jidi. We have Hassan Slayh, he was killed while he was recovering inside Nasser hospital. We have our colleagues who have been burned while they were doing their jobs inside a tent camp for the journalists in Khan Younis, and also by an Israeli airstrike. Also, we have this personal effect on our life as breadwinners, as mothers, fathers, daughters, and sons. We are in part of families. I can remember now Shuruq Al-Aila, she's my colleague. She's a real hero. She lost her husband, Rushdi Al-Sarraj. He is also a journalist. He was hit in an airstrike. She continued the work of her journalism and media company, she and her beloved one. And now she's raising a daughter, a single mother, after her journalist husband was killed. I have my colleagues the men, the males who evacuated their children and mothers and families outside of Gaza Strip, and now they are living here under the fire for reporting only. Me and my husband, we are a couple of journalists. We evacuated our children also to Cairo, and we are now a separated family, me and my husband, covering and reporting from the field, and our children are growing up far from us, and this is very hard for a parent also to happen. We paid a high price for the coverage in Gaza Strip, and we were alone with no support from any other organizations or even the humanitarian law or the international human rights law or whatever was supposed to support us, because the full Israeli control and full Israeli attacks against us in the field. We paid that price, but we are also proud of ourselves that we're still doing our job. We're still speaking up the voice of the victims. We have this speech that we are talking with each other every day, that if the citizen of the Gaza Strip experienced his own tragedy for once, we as journalists experienced the 2 million and more tragic experience for those people, because we are part of them and because we have our own tragedies and we are speaking about their tragedies. We were part when they buried their families and beloved ones. We were there. We were there when they were injured, when they are experienced, and we also experienced the starvation now. And before, we are there while nobody was there. So we know that we are doing a great job, but we need also the support and the rest. Also, another part of our the challenges or maybe the obstacles that Israel put in front of us was about the logistics. Israel prevent any equipments related to the journalism and media using it to enter in Gaza. So we don't have enough equipments. We talk about 20 months of coverage. We lost some of our equipments while we were moving from place to another as a displaced people, also by airstrikes, the SNGs, vehicles also. We don't have only enough vests and helmets also. So any attack could kill one of us. If my friend and my colleague Kalaja was putting a helmet, I think he will be with us now alive, but there is no equipment and no protection for us, and that's really hard, because anytime you could be in the field, you could be killed. That's it. That's very simple, and it's hard because when you go out, you wish to be back to the home or to the tent. Most of them lost their, and me, one of them, of the journalists, most of us lost our homes. As most of the Gazans people, we are living in tents, and we have this hard condition to live in dire humanitarian conditions related to the food, to the water, to the security, to the privacy. For us as a female journalist also, we have been suffering in the field as a female journalist, particularly that we have this role as we are mothers, and we have to cook sometimes. For sure, we have to cook sometimes. We have the cleaning issue, the hygiene, we're taking care of about our sick children, and all these details. So we have like a double load every time we think that, okay, it's the time to breathe. No, it's not the time to breathe at all. It's the time to make more loads on our shoulders. And this is hard to be, in fact, in such a situation under this fire and this very dangerous situations in the Gaza Strip. All what I want to highlight here, that when Israel forces, occupation forces attack one of the journalists, they said that he's a militant and we killed a militant. But what I can assure now, that all the colleagues have been killed in Israeli airstrikes were in their homes with their family, not in a militant site, also in the field, doing their job, reporting, filming, recording, not weaponed, not armed in any way. They only have the equipment of the work. So why they keep calling them militants when they were killed at least we can say 100% they weren't doing any military activities at all in that time. Also, I want to highlight another issue related to the places that we are working on. Because of the shortage of the logistics, we have a certain places like a journalist camps, and mostly it's very close to hospital. We think that hospitals is one of the civilians places, so it should be protected by the IHLs, and that's it. But we were attacked inside these places, inside these camps, which is only for the journalists, and we know each other as a journalist, and we are protected also like these hospitals. So we were attacked inside these places, and this cost us the souls of many of our colleagues. On behalf of my colleagues, I would like really to thank you for this chance, and I would urge you and all the concerned people in this room to raise our voices as a journalist, also to push for an independent investigation related to the killing and the crimes of killing this journalist, and also to hold these perpetrators accountable, and to make some benefits for us, for the victims also, particularly the journalists and the media professionals, victims who have been killed in this war. So many thanks for that opportunity again, and I wish you good of luck with that.
Thank you, Nour. We truly appreciate your effort to be with us today, especially given the difficult circumstances. I will now give the floor to Mauricio Morales, who flew in to be with us today for this panel, as well as for the exhibition that we've been talking about. It's his work along with Fatma Hasuna's work that we can see this afternoon. So thank you, Mauricio.
I would like to express my gratitude to the missions of Colombia and Palestine at the UN, to RSF, and also thanked all organizations and individuals who still believe in the importance of solidarity. And above all, I thank the Palestinian people, the grassroots organizations that continue resisting through art, culture, medicine, and education, and the journalists who continue dying and working amid the destructions of their communities, the deaths of their families and neighbors, and the occupation and repression in Gaza and the West Bank. I am a Colombian independent photographer and journalist. I have covered the escalation of violence against the Palestinian population in the West Bank during different trips started in late October 2023. I want to thank the media outlets that have remained committed to publishing reports from there. But those were not the first times I was in Palestine. The first was in the summer of 2014 in the Gaza Strip during what the Israeli government called Operation Protective Edge. At that time, more than 2,000 people were killed in the Strip. One memory crosses my mind: the processions of dead and wounded, often children, after the bombings at the emergency entrance of the now destroyed Al-Shifa hospital. Images that repeat today, and each day the level of horror from Gaza seems worse. We are at risk of becoming numb by those images. We run the danger of them no longer mattering, of looking away, not because they scare us, but because they have become so normalized that they bore us. That is why today I want to talk about interpretations and contradictions. In journalism, freedom of expression and how it is interpreted is one of them. So perhaps we need to start by reflecting on what these two words truly mean: freedom and journalism. Many women and men with greater analytical and philosophical capacities than mine have tried to define freedom, but individually and collectively, we each have an idea of what it is. For some, freedom is being able to do business without paying taxes. For others, it's being able to go to school. For others, it's being able to move through their land without checkpoints or the fear of being detained. For others, it's the ability to extract and distribute resources from other countries, among a few. And for many, freedom is simply having a plate of food and a sky without drones or missiles falling overhead. Many interpretations of freedom, without a doubt. And journalism, again, we can find thousands of definitions. But we might agree on a few points. That journalism is a profession that informs and influences the building of consensus from which public opinion is born. It provides information and creates narratives. Some build those narratives based on facts and rigorous work in the field. Others, from comfortable chairs in TV or radio studios, generate what they call opinion journalism. I believe journalism is a job that leans more toward public service than to feeding the entertainment industry, which it sadly seems sometimes to be just another part of. I believe the importance of fieldwork beyond television sets and editorial offices. I believe journalism and journalists should not continue functioning as an echo chambers for themselves, chasing awards, distinctions, applauses, pats on the back, and other forms of spectacle. I believe it's necessary to open spaces that integrate journalism as an agent of social change and transformation, more connected to people, to collective work, and to the needs of grassroots communities who increasingly and justifiably believe less and less in it. But perhaps we're missing something that Eric Fromm once asked. What do we want freedom for? And we could add, what do we want freedom of the press for? In journalism, the same thing happens as with freedom. For some, freedom of the press means being able to create narratives dictated by certain economic interests. For others, it's the ability to spread fake news without any consequence. For others, it's working under precarious economic conditions without the material guarantees to do the job. And for others, still, freedom of the press means being able to go into the field, gather information, and publish reports without the fear of being killed, captured, imprisoned, or exiled. In the West Bank, freedom of the press means that the best marked press does not become a target, leading to arrest, injury, or administrative detention. In Gaza today, freedom of the press simply means staying alive, or that your family stays alive. It is important for the state of Israel to allow foreign journalists to enter Gaza Strip. But I ask, is it more urgent to demand respect for the lives of Palestinian journalists who report from there? Is it more meaningful to recognize the work of local journalists in Gaza and the West Bank and of their media? Or is there a hidden desire for what happens in Palestine to only count if it's validated by the mass media of the global north? I had the fortune and privilege of covering what was happening in Jenin alongside local journalists. Learning from them has been one of the greatest privileges I had as a journalist. Some of them bear the scars from bullets after attacks on their clearly marked press vehicles, even while wearing vests and helmets. Others remain imprisoned in Israeli jails. Others have been killed in the streets of Jenin. We remember Shirin, killed by an Israeli sniper in 2022. Because like many of our colleagues in Gaza and other parts of the world, these journalists speak closely with the people they report on. It's their home, their community. It is not surprising that very few people in Tulkarem, Jenin, Bethlehem, or in remote villages of Colombia read or watch media based in New York. But they do follow and get their information from local media. It's not due to lack of education, as some dare to claim. Perhaps it's because those communities, forgotten by the Colombian state or living under military occupation for decades in Palestine, are political actors in their own right. They have their own journalists and their own media, and they inform us. So the question to the major media outlets of the global north and to journalists is, what narrative are you adopting and with what rigor when it comes to Palestine? When you say people have died in an attack instead of people were killed in an Israeli attack, language matters. That is why we must call things by their name and understand the meaning of words and concepts like freedom, press, ethnic cleansing, occupation, and genocide. because the killing of over 210 journalists has a name. The attack on healthcare workers has a name. The forced displacement of millions in Gaza and more than 40,000 in Jenin and Tulkarem has a name. The killing of over 50,000 people, more than 50,000 of them children, has a name. The only advantage of what is happening in Palestine today, and I refer to the genocide in Gaza and the ethnic cleansing across the Palestinian territories, is that although it has been going on for decades, this is not past history, though it will become so. And the weight of that will fall on all of us and on where we stood at this moment. What is happening now. It is our present. No matter how much blood has been shed, we can and must, from our roles, from wherever position we have in the world, fight to stop it. Or maybe we need to redefine what we mean by humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mauricio. And lastly, I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Clayton Wiemers from Reporters Without Borders, who will speak to us about the failure of international legal protections for journalists with a focus on the situation in Palestine. Thank you, Clayton.
Thank you, Ramon. When a journalist is killed anywhere in the world, at RSF, we stop everything we're doing. We seek out who committed the crime, why, and how, to seek justice, to make noise, and to use every lever at our disposal to combat impunity. Over the past 20 months, the Israeli army has killed over 200 journalists in Gaza. Journalists who were targeted and killed because they were journalists. Killing a journalist is a crime. Killing a journalist while they're reporting on a war is a war crime. The killing of a journalist in a conflict is often a failure of policy, be it a failure of the authorities to properly observe or implement the guardrails meant to ensure the safety of journalists. But the killing of 200 journalists is not a failure of policy. It is the policy. And it's an unprecedented crime. This is a crime committed first and foremost against the journalists who are victimized. But it's also a crime committed against the whole world because it jeopardizes all of our values and our right to be informed. And it's a crime that's being committed over and over again with impunity, despite our appeals, despite our complaints, despite all the pressure. And our inaction, our inability to stop this ongoing crime in progress, incriminates us all. At RSF, we don't defend journalists because they are a special class of citizens. The death of every civilian in Gaza is an unspeakable tragedy. But the death of a journalist also kills something else, the truth. The truth is what is happening in our world. The truth that is a necessary precondition of any participatory democracy. They say journalism is the first draft of history. Killing a journalist is killing a witness to history. Not only are the Israeli forces killing journalists in Gaza on a regular basis, they have consistently blocked outside media from getting into Gaza to report on the war. How many times have we been told by Israeli spokespeople not to trust the reporting of Gazan journalists or the death toll reported by the Gaza Health Ministry? They dismiss these reports as propaganda. But it is Israel and its policy of media blockade in Gaza which has created a vacuum of reliable information in which propaganda thrives. This conflict is often described as complex, but that's an abstraction meant to absolve us from seeking solutions to problems that, in the case of press freedom, have very simple solutions. To stop the unprecedented killing of journalists in Gaza, Israel must stop targeting them. To help the world understand the truth of what's happening there, let the reporters in. I don't mean for this to be construed as minimizing the heroic efforts of Gazan journalists who have put their lives on the line to tell the story of this war from the front lines. Journalists like Fatima Hassouna, to name just one of hundreds. Fatima might have liked to be with us today, but Israel forbade her to leave Gaza, and then she was killed by the Israeli army. We can't leave the burden of reporting this war entirely on the journalists of Gaza. Gaza is isolated, destroyed, its journalists massacred and defamed, its newsrooms are targeted. But it is thanks to the courage and work of reporters like Fatima Hassouna and all the others that we have access to a small glimpse of the reality experienced by the people of Gaza on a day-to-day basis. But it's just a small glimpse. We need to open up Gaza to international media. But it is thanks to their testimonies, their images, their courage, that the world is able to denounce genocide, ethnic cleansing, and war crimes. That is why they're targeted. That's why we defend them at RSF, and it's why the entire international community must do more to defend them going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clayton, and thank you all for those powerful insights. We're gonna now open the floor to questions. My colleague, Manuela Rios, will read some of them, but I think we can start with the ambassador, please.
Well, thank you very much, and I wish to first of all thank Colombia and Palestine for convening this very important event and dialogue, and I wish to particularly thank all the panelists for your sobering insights and reality, and indeed the toll on journalists in the OPT and particularly in Gaza is alarming, and I wish to underline what you stated, that when we are talking about 200 journalists being killed, it is in fact a policy, and in this regard, as we are aware, regardless of the fact that the Security Council particularly seems to be helpless, but the world is responding through various means. Soon we will be having the General Assembly Emergency Special Session. The ICJ also is undertaking a number of proceedings. And in this regard, and this leads me to my question, as attacks on journalists constitute a violation of international humanitarian law, and as we understand, the ICJ is currently considering the case of which Indonesia is one of the core group members, on the obligations of Israel in relations to the present activities of the UN, other international organizations, and third states within the humanitarian context. Now, how can we bring this grave situation facing the journalists, which is a violation of international humanitarian law, to the attention of the ICJ, so that it become an additional point for the court in formalizing its opinion? Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to address? Maybe Ms. Albanese would like to address that question. Did you hear the question? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ambassador, and terima kasih banyak. So I think that it's true that there are developments at the international level, and certainly the upcoming opinion of the ICJ is one. But let me take a step back and also reflect on the what is missing right now, because you all know that have been one of the chroniclers of the genocide in the last 1 year and a half, and it continues. I will continue to be. I will continue to collect the information, the data, the horrible statistics that say nothing about the killing, about the infliction of severe physical and mental harm, about the creation of conditions of life calculated to destroy, and others are doing the same. And still, in the face of all this, and in the face of an ICJ initiated proceeding by South Africa and joined by a number of you. The majority of member states doesn't comply with this. So of course, we can have more proceedings, more decisions, but what is worth if most of you doesn't abide with this? The ICJ advisory opinion, which says that the obligation is unlawful, requires no further development, no further elaboration. Member states need to cut all trades, especially weapons, not just what states provide to Israel, what states buy from Israel, the surveillance technology, the weapons technology, the agricultural technology, everything that has been done exploiting the Palestinians need to be curtailed. So you need to impose your businesses registered in your countries, pension funds, banks, and academia, including the university, to review their partnership with Israel. So this is why I don't, frankly, ambassadors, excellencies, I don't think that anything else can come from the international judicial system, in terms of no resolutions from the General Assembly, the Security Council, can add anything. It's all written there. And it was, with all due respect, we didn't even have to wait the last 600 days, because Israel has been committing war crimes since the first days of of 1967, building settlements, forcibly displacing the Palestinians, which is a crime against humanity, and now up to starvation. So again, I insist, the responsibility is in the capitals. Either your capitals decide to do no longer business or as usual, otherwise there is nothing else that can come from the international system, from New York, from Geneva, from The Hague, that is going to save the Palestinians, the Israelis, and frankly, the generations to come, because this is not going to stay in Palestine. And what's happening in Germany, in my own country, in France and the UK, and the repression that we have seen in Western countries, including the United States, speak to the danger of letting impunity fester.
Thank you, Ms. Albanese. Ambassador Sanchez wishes to.
Ambassador and Ms. Albanese, to your point and giving more context to it, yes, we have a political obligation of being assertive of what we can do beyond what already we have, all the mechanisms that we have explored. In January of this year, the Hague Group was created by the several states that are interested exactly in what Ms. Albanese is saying, of taking into action what already we have, the legal means that we have explored. Yesterday, to this purpose, Colombia, South Africa, that co-shared the Hague Group, we convened to an emergency meeting in Bogota in mid-July to meet not only with the founder members of the Hague Group, which are 8 countries, but also to any other state that is interested in going that extra step, in understanding that we have taken all legal actions possible, but we need as states not to be, as you are well saying, Ms. Albanese, not to be business as usual. So I take the opportunity to invite all member states to come to Bogota in 15 and 16 of July, to this emergency meeting of the Hague Group. So the states that are interested in being assertive in our interest of protecting lives, of creating the right situations to not be oblivious of what we have heard from so many people on the ground. This measure and this meeting in Bogota wants to be an action-driven, although it's a kind of cliche word in these quarters, but an action-driven meeting so we can, together as states, do something about it. Thank you, Master.
Thank you, Ambassador, and I think Clayton wants to say something.
Yeah, just very briefly, we also have to make sure that all of these mechanisms that we're employing include all of the victims that we need to hear from. And since we're here to talk about journalists, that means we have to make sure that journalists are heard from not just as witnesses, but as victims themselves. Your question was about the ICJ, but at the ICC, we've recently filed applications for several journalists to be considered as victims in the ongoing investigations that the ICC is undertaking. We've also filed 4 complaints at the ICC on behalf of journalists who have been victims of war crimes in Gaza and the West Bank and in Lebanon in the course of this war. So yes, it is about using all the mechanisms that are disposable, making sure we're using them to their fullest potential to include all the victims.
Thank you, Clayton. We have a few more questions. Manuela is going to read them.
Thank you very much, Ramon. And there are a couple of questions from the audience. One is for Clayton specifically. The war in Gaza has introduced new unprecedented challenges for wartime journalists. What has been the most concerning trend observed by RSF thus far? And I think since we have 2 questions, I'll read the other one right away that I think is very pertinent for all panelists. So maybe we can have another round for all of you to share your ideas. What is the narrative that we must overcome first to contribute to the protection of freedom of press and the protection of journalists? So a question regarding narrative, the second one. So I'll give you the floor first, Clayton, and then anyone who wants to react.
I mean, the biggest concern really has to be the appalling death toll of journalists in Gaza. It's really unlike any conflict before it. And frankly, we're at a loss of how to prevent further killings of journalists in Gaza without a significant change in the rules of engagement that the Israeli army has so far been following in the field. I mean, the numbers are just staggering. There's not really a good point of comparison in modern history. But when you layer on top of that the media blockade that's been going on since October 2023 to prevent information from getting out, it's created effectively, that in combination with the targeting of Palestinian telecoms infrastructure, with the targeting of journalists, it all combines for creating a black hole of reliable information in Gaza that just plunges the entire region into darkness and impoverishes our understanding of what's really going on. But I have to bring it back to the unprecedented death toll. It's by far the most concerning. And the way we combat the narrative that's harmful there is we can't accept this normalization of the killing of journalists, and we can't accept this normalization of the rationale for why journalists should be killed. Consistently, the Israeli government has claimed when a journalist is killed that, in fact, they were a militant, even when it can be demonstrably proven otherwise. We simply can't accept this as normal. It's been but that's the risk when it goes on for so long with no changes, and we get hoarse in our voice saying the same thing over and over and over again. But we have to keep saying it over and over again because something has to change. It can't keep going on like this.
Thank you. I think Ms. Albanese wanted to say something.
Yes. This last comment is very enlightening for the point I want to make. And thank you, Clayton, for offering me the opportunity. Do we know why these journalists have been targeted? Because they're not being killed, just killed. They've been targeted. Why? Because they're Palestinians. And because they are Palestinians who are documenting and enlightening what happens. So, I'm even surprised that in a context like this, where everyone is aware that we need to change the narrative, you keep on calling a war. And then this is the first act of normalization that we make, my friends. This is not a war. And if it's of course there are hostilities, but calling it a war gives it a veneer of legitimacy that this doesn't have. And again, let me be the pedantic lawyer. The International Court of Justice in July 2024. So in the middle of all this, it's not that it has not considered the context of the ongoing hostilities, has said that Israel maintains an unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory. It is to dismantle the troops from the Gaza Strip, the West Bank and East Jerusalem, to dismantle the colonies and to stop withdrawing any form of, stop controlling the resources. Meaning it needs to go. Applied to Gaza, this means that Israel has no right whatsoever to be in Gaza, to control the airspace, to control the water. This is what you should be discussing, my friends, not whether this war has gone too far. Because if we stay in this Overton window of the war, we miss the forest for the trees. Israel is killing people in Gaza because in order to convince the Palestinians to go, to leave, the objective, I said it on the 14th of October 2023, and not because I have the crystal ball, but because I'm a scholar of forced displacement of the Palestinians. This is what I know more than anything else. When there is an opportunity, when there is the fog of war, the normalcy of war, Israel advances mass destruction and forced displacement. It has done it in 1947-49, it has done it in 1967, and it is doing it now. So please check the words we are using, because as long as we continue to operate in this limited, shrinking and suffocating Overton window, we will pay a disservice to the Palestinians and also to the other conflict that will happen, because this humanitarian camouflage that Israel has used in this current war is what is going to legitimize the targeting of journalists and other professions even more in the years to come. Sorry, I know I always come as a cold shower on anyone.
Thank you, Ms. Albanese. I don't know if anybody else wants to... Mauricio.
Well, I would like just to add that, yeah, there's a lot of narratives coming from the big ones that is dehumanizing the Palestinians and to allow what's happening. That's one of the biggest ones, but that, weird enough, it's becoming more normal than getting back. The other issue, Ms. Albanese was saying, is that there's not a war in the West Bank. And the West Bank has been forcibly, Israeli have been forcibly displaced over 40,000 people from the refugee camps in Jenin and Tulkarem. And there's not a war, there's not any armed clashes at the moment in any of those camps, and people are not allowed to go back to their houses to retrieve their belongings. And they continue to the military presence in the camps, they continue targeting journalists, they continue targeting healthcare workers. And I might add that in March 8, while Israelis were raiding the Jenin hospital, I was pointed a gun by Israeli soldiers, detained, forced to delete my pictures from my cell phone, forced to delete my pictures from my camera, and moved to a position where there were 5 colleagues, Palestinian colleagues, detained and forced to delete their material as well. This practice is common in the West Bank, and this is what's happening there. There's no equilibrium between two hostile forces. There's the Israeli army attacking the civil population in the West Bank. And Gaza, well, we just know what's happening there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mauricio. I don't know if there's no more questions. If anybody else wants to add something or ask a question? Oh, does Nour, if she's still with us, Nour, if you wanna, I'm not sure if she's there still. Connection with Gaza might be difficult, but if you're there, if you can hear us, you're welcome to. Okay, well, thank you all again. I want to sincerely thank our panelists for the courage and their insight and their ongoing commitment to truth And I would like to give the floor now to Ambassador Feda Abdelhadi, Deputy Permanent Representative of the State of Palestine to the UN, who will deliver the closing remarks for this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramon, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today for this very timely yet somber discussion. The State of Palestine is grateful to the Permanent Mission of Colombia for its co-sponsorship of this important meeting, which is yet another expression of Colombia's principled solidarity with the Palestinian people and support for their just cause, including in these darkest days, and including, as you've mentioned, Ambassador, as a leading member of the Hague Group urgently seeking accountability and justice. We also express our appreciation to Reporters Without Borders for partnering with us in this event and for their tireless advocacy for the rights of journalists worldwide. We are most grateful to all of our distinguished panelists, to the formidable Francesca Albanese, UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the occupied Palestinian territory, who is, yes, a lawyer, insisting that Palestine cannot be the exception to the application of international law, and a courageous and principled advocate for the rights and protection of the Palestinian people, relentlessly working for accountability and justice, including through the chronicling of the genocide being perpetrated by Israel against the Palestinian people. And this includes the powerful reports that she has submitted to the Human Rights Council and to the General Assembly. And so we thank you for that, Francesca. I also wish to thank Ms. Nour Swirki. I'm not sure if she's still with us, but I think that we all very much appreciated the challenges that she had in being with us today from Gaza, Palestinian journalist and a human rights defender. We thank her for sharing her testimony, giving names to and humanizing the many of her colleagues that have been killed in Gaza, and reminding us also of the ban on international journalists and the responsibility and burden on Palestinian journalists to report from Gaza while themselves struggling to survive and bearing loss, displacement, starvation, and all the same traumas and grief that are borne by the rest of the population. Thank you to Mauricio Morales, the Colombian photojournalist who has reported extensively from occupied Palestine. Thank you, Mauricio, for sharing through your lens a view of the plight of the Palestinian people in the West Bank, and also sharing the testimony of what you've witnessed in Palestine and how media interprets or misinterprets this reality, and the duty to inform global citizenry with facts and accurate terms, no matter how uncomfortable they may be. And thank you to Clayton Weimers of Reporters Without Borders for sharing with us your reflections on the failures in ensuring protection to journalists and the urgency of stopping the impunity of the targeting, the killing, the jailing of journalists simply for doing their work, as we've so shockingly witnessed in Palestine and especially in Gaza. Thank you to all of you for being with us, for lending your time, your expertise, and your lived experiences enriching this discussion, one that lies at the heart of our collective commitment to truth, accountability, and the protection of journalists in times of crisis. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, if you will allow me just a few reflections on behalf of the delegation of the State of Palestine on the situation that we are facing. And we've heard a lot of these facts presented by the experts that have joined us today. As we all know by now, over 55,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza by Israel in the last 20 months alone, and over 125,000 people have been injured, many of whom will die of their wounds, and not in view of the cameras, names, faces, people that will never be known to most of us. The majority of the casualties are children, women, and elderly persons, but also youth, men, mothers, fathers. Thousands of souls have been disappeared under the rubble in mass graves in Israel's jails. The surviving population of 2 million people is being forcibly starved, bombarded, traumatized, and terrorized every single day. Forcibly displaced over and over again, chased from one end of Gaza to the other by a ruthless occupying army. We have now entered the 21st month of this unmitigated nightmare of incalculable trauma, loss, and grief. And this comes against the backdrop of 58 years of this illegal Israeli occupation of the Palestinian land and 77 years of ongoing Nakba suffered by the Palestinian people. In Gaza, life is being erased, the entire population has been dehumanized, and Israel has not hidden its aims. The declarations, threats, and hateful incitement are chilling, and the brutality and the cruelty and criminality are unconscionable. In the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, the population is also under siege and is being terrorized by the Israeli occupying forces and settler gangs in militias implementing Israel's sinister illegal colonial plans. We've heard today from Maurizio, we heard it from Francesca Albanese. The objective is the removal of the Palestinian people from their land. Refugee camps are being destroyed, and refugee families are being driven from their homes yet again. Ethnic cleansing, apartheid, and genocide in plain sight. As concluded by Special Rapporteur Albanese in her report entitled Genocide as Colonial Erasure, and I quote, "Today, the genocide of the Palestinians appears to be the means to an end. The complete removal or eradication of Palestinians from the land so integral to their identity and which is illegally and openly coveted by Israel." The world knows and sees Israel's war crimes and crimes against humanity. This is because of the extraordinary courage of journalists, reporters, and media workers who have risked their lives to expose the truth. They have documented what can only be described as the first live-stream genocide, and their work has countered the virulent distortion and misinformation campaign by the occupying power, bringing the reality and facts to the world. As we heard from our panelists, over 220 Palestinian journalists have been killed in the last 20 months. 5 more journalists killed just in this past week alone as we prepared for this event. They were killed doing their job, foretelling the truth of the Palestinian people's plight, just as journalists like Shireen Abu Akleh and Yasser Murtaja were killed before them. In many cases in Gaza, as we've also heard, journalists have been targeted and killed alongside their family members, whether in a tent, in a hospital, or in their own home. And this was the fate of photojournalist Fatima Hassouna, who was cruelly murdered in April by Israel alongside her pregnant sister and 8 other family members, and whose works will be displayed in the exhibit later this evening. Let us be clear, this is not so-called collateral damage, nor is it the result of indiscriminate Israeli bombardment. This is a deliberate, systematic campaign to silence the truth. It is a direct result of decades of Israeli impunity that has yet to face an ounce of accountability for unspeakable crimes committed against the Palestinian people in broad daylight, including the crime of genocide. Never in a single modern conflict have we seen so many journalists killed in such a short span of time. It is a crime of journalism, against journalism, a crime against humanity, and a crime against truth. Independent international investigations for the journalists killed by Israel must be launched. Sanctions against Israel, the occupying power, must be pursued, as well as an arms embargo. These are minimal measures that must be taken in the face of maximum impunity. With mechanisms of accountability afforded by international law, condemnations and outrage must be translated into concrete measures to deter perpetrators who believe they can kill journalists, civilians, doctors, humanitarians, alongside the rest of the population without consequence. We must act with the same resolve that courageous journalists display every day in the face of existential threats. We pay tribute to them, those whose lives were taken in the genocide, and those who continue, like Nour, risking their lives, documenting Israel's atrocity crimes against our people, and giving voice to the voiceless and oppressed. And we call for immediate action to ensure the protection of all civilians, including journalists. Excellencies, colleagues, we close today's meeting with an insistence that the truth cannot be silenced, and with a renewed call for justice for journalists, for all our people, and for an end to this historic injustice against them. Once again, we thank the Permanent Mission of Colombia, Reporters Without Borders, and our esteemed panelists for their insights and contributions, and more importantly, their courage. Let us carry forward their voices and continue advocating for accountability and fundamental rights of all. Together, we believe we can work toward a future where truth prevails and justice is served. I thank you all for your participation today and your solidarity.
Thank you, Ambassador Abdulhadi, and I'm glad Nour is back with us. I hope you were able to hear us that last stretch, Nour. Thank you all for being here today, and we want to insist on inviting you guys to the opening of the photo exhibition tonight at 6 p.m. As Ambassador Sanchez explained, we were very sad not to be able to have it here at the UN, the place it should have been, but instead at a gallery, which is, don't worry, it's just across the street. It's like a block away, so you can make your way there at 6, and we hope to see you there. Thank you all so much, and I think, yeah, we'll be seeing you.